not, I can actually see Iowa from my house. I really can. And I'll tell you why, right outside of my front door, literally outside of my front door, is the Mississippi River. And on the other side of the Mississippi River is what? So when I'm getting up in the morning and I'm having my first cup of coffee, this is what I see. I see the great state of Iowa every single morning. So while I come from the Illinois Quad Cities, believe it or not, I've actually spent most of my professional life here in Iowa. So as the nice introduction shared with you, I crossed the river actually for 17 years working as a journalist in Davenport. And for another 3.5 years, I drove from the Quad Cities to Des Moines, and I worked in healthcare here. Literally, okay, I might get my direction a little bit turned around, but Principal Park is what? Right that way? Right that way. So I literally, okay, everybody, some pointing that way, some pointing that way. So I lived literally right outside of Principal Ballpark, and I absolutely loved watching the Iowa Cubs. Loved watching the Iowa Cubs. And so when I go to or from the games, anybody ever go to the High Life Lounge? So the old vintage beers, I would have a beer or two. Schlitz and Schmitz. You know, all the beers there are pre-1979. So I'd have a beer or two, and then anybody ever have the fried Spam sandwich? So I'd have that, and then I'd have a pickled egg, and it would just remind me of the wholesome, healthy Midwestern eating that we all love. But what makes Des Moines special? What makes Iowa special? It's not just the restaurants, it's not just the food, it is the people. It is people like you. And so we may have a rivalry, Iowa and Illinois, on the basketball court or on the football field. And of course we both have the best farmland anywhere in the world, right? But I do know where we are the same, Iowans and Illinoisans, is in those Midwestern values and our ethics. We share that same pride in American manufacturing. And when we walk down Main Street, we do it a little differently than other places, don't we? We look up and we say hello because we're Midwesterners. When our neighbors or our friends fall on hard times, we come together and we help them. It's why we call it the Heartland, because it's who we are. And that's really what I'm here to talk with you about today. If you leave this place with nothing else more than this, please know this. There is hope for Democrats in the Heartland. So since November, we've heard a lot about the counties that voted twice for President Obama and then switched to Donald Trump. In fact, there was not any state where more of that happened by county, unfortunately, than in Iowa. Do you know that? Okay, and then in my state, there were 11 counties. We have 102 altogether, a little bit more than your 99 here. But in Illinois, there were 11 counties that went from President Obama to Donald Trump. And all but 2 of those, so 9 of the 11 were in my congressional district. All right, I just share that with you for a little perspective. And Donald Trump won my congressional district, but I won by 20 points. And so I know a thing or two about Donald Trump voters. And so what happened is after November, I had some folks who turned to me and said, "You're like a political unicorn." In other words, when you're a Midwestern rural Democrat, we're almost an endangered species. And we've got to change that. And it really pains me to admit this. It's like a knife to my heart that there are some in the Democratic Party who just want to write off districts like mine and forget about states like Iowa and say that it's just too darn hard to elect Democrats in rural America and that we should just be flown over. Well, we've got news for them, don't we? Because the Heartland is far from Trump country. And the road to a successful Democratic Party runs right through the Heartland. You know, so many, and I'm sure there are so many people in this audience today, worked so hard in the last election cycle. I mean, think about how hard you all worked. I traveled more than 22,000 miles and went to about 22 congressional districts, from small towns to big cities, not just in Iowa and Illinois, but also in Indiana, Minnesota, Michigan, Montana. And you know what I saw? I saw too many forgotten corners of our country. Frankly, too many forgotten places from our own party. And you know what? We can never let that happen again. And we're going to need your help on that. And one reason I know we're not going to let that happen is because we started this program that we call Build the Bench. It's an all-day candidate boot camp where we are working with candidates whether they want to run for dog catcher or Congress. And we're making sure that they walk away from that training knowing how not just to run, but to win. And I know we're making a difference because just before I came here, just down the road a little bit, we had one of the candidate boot camps right here in Des Moines. And I can tell you that you've got some wonderful, wonderful candidates who are ready to step up to the challenge. And this is what Tom Vilsack, your former governor and my friend, has been talking about for a generation or more, that it's got to start from the bottom up. And we can win in the Midwest. I know we can win. We just need to make sure that we take that approach, because we know what's on the agenda of our Republican friends, don't we? We know what's happening out in Washington, and you certainly know what's happening here in Iowa. This repealing collective bargaining rights, the privatizing Medicaid, cutting education funding. This is the Republican agenda, plain for all to see. But what's our agenda? You guys think about that at all? What's our agenda? We've been criticized for not having a clear and compelling vision. And I hate to say it, but I think a lot of the critics are right on that. So let's talk about that a little bit. What happened? Why do our friends in small towns all throughout the Heartland feel that our party's left them behind? Why have we lost more than 1,000 seats in state legislatures, governor's mansions, and in Congress in less than a decade? You know, I can tell you what I've learned from my own congressional races in a swing district. And it starts, my friends, by getting off the interstate. Lesson number one. It starts by visiting the town square, the Main Street pub, the local church, not just political functions, but places like I just talked about. And it starts by listening to hardworking Americans who not only feel like they've been forgotten, but maybe they really have been forgotten. Far too many